June 12th, 1994. A quiet street in Los Angeles turned into something no one could ignore. 2 lives ended in a way that shocked even seasoned investigators. And within days, the spotlight landed on a man the world thought it knew. OJ Simpson, a superstar, a household name, suddenly at the center of something dark. Then came the moment that froze the nation. A white Ford Bronco moving slowly across the highway, nearly 95 million people watching it live. This wasn't just news anymore, it was something bigger. A question started forming in everyone's mind. Did he do it, or did something else happen? Before we continue, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and let's dive into what really happened that night. Late on June 12th, 1994, outside a condominium at 875 South Bundy Drive, the scene told a story that was impossible to ignore. Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman were found lifeless just steps from the entrance. The attack was not random. It was close, personal, and carried out with extreme force. There were no witnesses, no immediate answers, just silence and a crime scene filled with questions. What stood out right away was how direct it all felt. This wasn't something distant or planned from afar. It happened face to face, in a place that should have been safe. The lack of witnesses made it even more unsettling. No one saw it happen, yet everything pointed to a fast, intense encounter that ended in seconds but left behind lasting shock. As officers moved through the area, early clues began to form a rough picture, but nothing complete. The location, the timing, and the nature of the attack suggested this was targeted, not accidental. And that raised the biggest question: who would do this and why? The answers weren't at the scene, but the direction of the case was already starting to shift. And as the investigation moved forward, one name kept coming back into focus. Before this night, OJ Simpson was seen as untouchable. A sports legend, a public figure, someone people trusted. But behind that image, there were cracks that had already started to show. Years earlier, in 1989, a 911 call captured fear in real time. Nicole Brown Simpson's voice was clear, and so were her words. "He's going to kill me. He's going to kill me."
Drove up again. He's drove me over.
Hey, wait a minute, what kind of car is he in?
He's in a white Bronco, but first of all, he broke the back door down to get in.
Okay, wait a minute, what's your name?
Nicole Simpson.
Okay.
That moment led to an arrest and a no-contest plea to domestic violence, followed by probation. By June 17, 1994, everything changed again. Simpson was formally charged, but he didn't turn himself in at the agreed time. Instead, he became the center of one of the most watched moments in television history. Driving in a white Ford Bronco with Al Cowlings, he led police on a slow-speed chase across Los Angeles. The world stopped. Regular programming was interrupted, including Game 5 of the 1994 NBA Finals. Around 95 million people tuned in, watching every second unfold live. What started as a criminal case had now turned into something else entirely: a national spectacle. A moment that blurred the line between reality and television. And when it finally reached the courtroom, the entire world was already watching. On January 24th, 1995, the courtroom doors opened, and what followed lasted 8 months, stretching until October 3rd. This wasn't just a trial anymore. It became something people planned their days around. The case dominated screens, headlines, and conversations everywhere. At one point, it was covered in 2,237 news segments between 1994 and 1997, turning every detail into public discussion. Inside the courtroom, Lance Ito allowed live camera coverage, a decision that would later be criticized. But at the time, it pulled millions deeper into the case. The setting itself began to feel less like a courtroom and more like a stage. Then came the jury, 12 people, including 10 women, with 9 black jurors, 2 white jurors, and 1 Hispanic juror. That composition would later become a major part of how the verdict was understood. On one side stood the prosecution. On the other, a defense team so well known, it earned a nickname, the Dream Team. High-profile lawyers, strong personalities, and a strategy built for impact. Everything was set. 2 sides, 2 completely different stories. And while the cameras focused on every move, the real battle was about to begin with the evidence itself. Inside the courtroom, the case began to take shape through something far more technical: DNA. This wasn't just a small part of the case, it was everything. A total of 108 exhibits were presented, including 61 drops of blood, forming what looked like a complete chain linking the crime scene to OJ Simpson. There was blood found next to footprints near the victims, with a reported error probability of 1 in 9.7 billion. A trail of blood drops led away from the scene toward and through the back gate. Blood from Simpson, Nicole Brown Simpson, and Ron Goldman was found inside the Bronco, with an even lower error chance of 1 in 21 billion. At his home, more drops led from where the Bronco was parked straight to the front door. A glove found behind the house carried DNA from all three individuals. Inside the bedroom, socks were found with both Simpson and Nicole's blood, with an error probability of 1 in 6.8 billion. Even without witnesses, the pattern seemed clear. Piece by piece, it formed a story that didn't need someone to see it happen. On the surface, it looked precise, calculated, almost impossible to ignore. But instead of accepting it, the defense chose to challenge everything behind it. The defense didn't try to prove innocence directly. Their focus was simple: create doubt. Their argument was summed up in one line: the evidence was contaminated, compromised, and ultimately corrupted. Instead of fighting the results, they attacked how those results were handled. They pointed to mistakes during evidence collection. Gloves were not always changed between items. Some samples were stored in plastic bags instead of paper, or others stayed in a police van for up to 7 hours without refrigeration. These details may sound small, but they were used to suggest that the DNA could not be fully trusted. The strategy worked because DNA testing was still new to many people at the time. It wasn't something the average juror fully understood. That gap created space for doubt. The defense also challenged the timeline. They argued the events happened closer to 11 p.m., not earlier, suggesting O.J. Simpson may not have had enough time. On top of that, they claimed his physical condition, arthritis and past injuries, made it unlikely for him to carry out such an intense act. It wasn't about proving a different story. It was about making the existing one feel uncertain. And once doubt was planted, the next step was far more serious: questioning the system itself. And once doubt took hold, the defense pushed even further. They didn't just question the evidence, they questioned the people behind it. The claim was bold. Evidence had been planted, and at the center of that claim was Mark Fuhrman. Everything changed when audio recordings surfaced. On those tapes, Fuhrman used racist language multiple times. In court, he denied using those words in the past 10 years, but the tapes proved otherwise. When brought back to the stand, he chose to invoke the Fifth Amendment instead of answering whether he had planted evidence. That moment hit hard, not because it proved anything directly, but because it damaged trust. The defense also pointed to a chemical called EDTA found in blood samples. They argued it came from preserved police blood, suggesting it had been planted. But testing showed the levels were consistent with normal blood, and EDTA could also come from everyday food. Still, the argument had already done its job. The idea of misconduct, even without proof, created uncertainty. It shifted focus away from what was found to how it was found. The case was no longer just about facts. It became about belief. And then came the moment that would stay in people's minds longer than any argument ever could. On June 15th, 1995, inside the courtroom, something happened that would shape the entire outcome. O.J. Simpson was asked to try on the gloves connected to the case. It looked simple, just a demonstration, but the impact was anything but small. As he struggled to put them on, the gloves appeared too tight. The image was clear, and it stayed with everyone watching. Then came the line that would echo far beyond the courtroom: "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit." Those exact words became the center of the defense's closing argument. There was an explanation. The gloves had been soaked in blood and handled multiple times. Leather can shrink by as much as 15% after exposure to moisture. A new pair of the same gloves was later shown to fit him, but by then, the visual had already taken over. In a case filled with complex data and technical arguments, this was something anyone could understand in seconds. It didn't require science, it didn't require numbers, it just required what people saw with their own eyes. And sometimes that's all it takes to change how everything else is viewed. After months of arguments and tension, the final decision was now just hours away. October 3rd, 1995, the moment finally arrived. After months of testimony, arguments, and tension, the jury reached a decision in just 4 hours of deliberation. At 10:07 a.m., OJ Simpson was found not guilty on both counts. The reaction was immediate and massive. Around 100 million people worldwide watched or listened as the verdict was announced. Across the country, everything seemed to pause. Phone calls dropped by 58%, and activity on the New York Stock Exchange fell by 41%. It was more than a verdict. It was a moment that stopped time. But what followed revealed something deeper. Public opinion split sharply. About 75% of white Americans believed he was guilty, while around 70% of black Americans believed he was innocent. The divide wasn't just about the case. It reflected something much larger. Years later, some jurors said they would still stand by the decision. Others admitted they would change their vote. Then in 1997, a civil trial reached a different outcome. Simpson was found responsible and ordered to pay $33.5 million to the victims' families. 2 trials, 2 outcomes, one question that never truly went away. And even today, people are still asking the same thing. What really happened? Years passed, but this case never really closed in people's minds. The courtroom delivered one outcome, but the story kept evolving outside it. Books were written, interviews were given, and even a later televised conversation showed details that many saw as deeply unsettling. In 2025, the Simpson estate agreed to pay nearly $58 million to settle long-standing civil claims, showing that the consequences didn't end with the verdict. This wasn't just about one trial, it changed how people looked at fame, justice, and truth. So do you think justice was truly served? Or do you believe something was missed? Like the video, subscribe for more, and thanks for watching.